Good morning. My name is Daniel Tilias. I am a community development agent for the past 15 years. I have also worked as a community development consultant for the past 20 years all over Haiti. My main work activity is focused on the location of Cité Soleil, which is in the western region, mostly in Port-au-Prince, in a neighborhood called Cité Soleil. Cité Soleil has a very bad political history that make it involve or victims of different kind of man-made disaster. Or community center named after Sakala, a community center for peaceful alternatives, was built like to really respond to the disaster of a gun conflict. So there could be like a safe space for the kids to be, and also to create like a safe space in general for everyone in the community. Our space is a huge area that has like a playground for different kind of sport, but also concrete wall buildings with 4 rooms, and the largest one is what we call an auditorium, which is also a multi-purpose like building, which actually is what we use as a temporary shelter in cases of flooding and recently for gun conflict that had people to flee some communities and stay with us. So for flooding, it's not very common. We have had like a few attempts since the earthquake to have people move to a space. But the reality is people in Cité Soleil are so used to flooding that they manage to very quick to go back home or to not even try like to find a shelter. So that's why we still consider our space as a shelter for people, but it's not really used. Only the past 6 months, because there's been some gun conflict, we have seen people establish in our community center as a shelter for a couple months. And still now we have people living in the shelter, like in the auditorium room, which is a huge 9 meter per 18 meters, covered like with like a thin roof, but having like wall all surrounding it. That's where people bring all the belongings and put it in the back of the auditorium and bring all kind of mats and sheets. So at night they would just sleep on the floor, and some of them would just bring like a small mattress where they would just sleep there. So this is like the condition of our shelters that we know are not is not appropriate, and that's why, as a community development agent, I've been thinking about ideas for a shelter in terms of structure would have like to meet the a criteria of differentiate like space for like men and women, like having like a more appropriate like toilets so men and women could go, which is not the case right now in space at Sakala. It's like all men, women, children are in the large room. We have like 2 toilets that were serving like the kids coming to the community center, but one was supposed to go for boys and one for girls. But because of the poor management of this, we ended mostly close one for staff, and the other one is for anyone who can use it, which is poorly managed. So the best structure that we believe could work are containers, like the big shipping containers. So it will be ideal if like for a situation where people have like to design a shelter that they use the shipping containers, because they could even like take them from site to another site if there is a need and emergency somewhere else. Like shipping containers, there should be like decoration, there should be like signs, there should be all kind of proverbs, there should be the protocol written on them, so people can easily relate to the rules and the condition as reminders on the actual wall. So nice like artwork could make the space attractive enough so people can come to the space. Because very often we know that people don't come because it's not central in terms of location, and also it has to be in a place that people have been able like to see in the past, so they know that it really exists. So the space would become not something that people use once, but something that people relate to as an emergency space. And it would be good that like some shipping containers will be for men, some will be for women, with bunk beds that can help like people to feel that they are at risk. They are not at risk as they used to for things like flooding and others. So another thing that is important is to really like explain the different expectations that people would have, so we're not creating like too much of expectations that yes, we will do this for you and you will wait for too long, because it has been the situation with us at Sakala. We wanted the space to use and the people felt like I don't want to say the word comfortable, but like they were in a better shape there because they could find food, they could find the water available at Sakala because we have access to this. And it's almost like, you know what, why would I need like to go back in the community and pay for rent while I'm there? I get food, I get like a free space, I get water, there's a garden next door, which was like us like as the leadership of Sakala being biased to say we need a space like to use. This is just like a side idea. So everyone should have like a responsibility, so we know while they stay there, this is what they do. And some more that I would add to the space in terms of design, it's to really put a little like health, a space like a first aid space for anyone who's suffering for something, at least could go or could be quarantined somewhere. But because most often like the flooding brings some a mental complication, so it would be good to have like a mental healing space with some flowers next to it where people could have some session of meditation, so people can really feel that they're being taken care in terms of like their health, the mental health situation. The space should have like big, huge megaphone, like these huge speakers that can be reminders every day of what is the space about and why people like need to behave this way. And it's also could remind people the rules and why how things are taken care at the space. But the speakers also could be very useful because it can come like as a preventive measures. So if there is a disaster to come, people at least in the neighborhood could hear it from the speakers. And during the shelter use, people could have reminders, and after, people could still benefit from the space as a space that could deal with some emergency in the community, as like maybe when the Red Cross need like to have like a blood collection, they could use it. When there is a vaccination like for kids or even like for animals, people could come there, so they can really relate to the space as a space that like is useful. Another aspect of the space is the space need to have like a storage capacity to first deal with the papers and other important belonging easy that people can need to save, but also it can be also during the stay people can have like these belongings like store somewhere that is easy, as much as some people can even know that there will be a hurricane, for example. Let me bring these things like ahead, so if I have to run, I would not have like to take care of this. And the same thing should apply for some belongings like the livestock. Very often people don't want to leave their livestock behind, and they get cut in situations where they lose their lives because they were trying like to protect the livestock. If the space could have the capacity to create security for the livestock, as they can do it like for important papers, it will really make it like interesting. So more than that, like the space could also be available in the community to take care of other kind of emergency that we consider as disaster as well. Something like elderlies in the community who have nowhere to stay could maybe find like a space to stay there with some discipline and organized measures. The same thing for street kids could also find like a way like to find a place like to stay. Another thing is like to really have like on these walls some proverbs that can really connect people with what the place is about. We like to say that if you have short a leg, you start first warning when there is a problem. So this kind of like proverb could be all over as reminders for people. One concern that we don't know how to address and or like shelter structure is some myth and of Haiti. For example, many old women are being seen as witch. So it can be a big problem when like a old lady will be sleeping next to a little baby. If this baby is crying all night long, that's definitely an issue. And we've had in the past, not in our shelters, but in Haiti, situation where an old lady was passing by a shelter, mostly like a tent in a big shelter settlement, where a kid was crying all night long, and they accused this old lady as a witch, and sometimes even like a stone like the lady. So it's something that is very Haiti, but still need to be taken into account. So it's mostly my consideration of how like a shelter should look like. And it's very important that you could use like in the shelter some little techniques to learn to teach people some new skills for when they will be back home, or for when they will be even before they get into a hurricane. Things like how do you collect like rainwater? How do you make like a fire, starting with stone? Like this little how do you start a small surviving garden? How do you purify water using like some very easy techniques? So these are very easy way like to do it, and it would be best if there are also examples like the use of a like solar as energy, the use of windmill as energy, like all these things that could make people relate better to like a good structure that can be easy, like a moving to a different place that needed the most. But mostly that's the way that I see the capacity for a structure to be in some neighborhood at risk. And one more thing I would say is if it could be the same everywhere, so anywhere someone passing by, they would know that this is the model shelter that we were talking about. And this way people can relate to them whenever they see them, whenever that they need them. Thank you.